Olympus just announced a new lens, the 12 to 45mm f4 lens. And some of you wonder why Olympus announced that lens, because they already have the 12 to 40mm f2.8 lens, and then there is the 12 to 100mm f4 lens. And in this video I will compare all these three lenses together and see what are the differences and which lenses might be good for you. Hi there, I'm Peter Forsgård, Olympus visionary and professional photographer from Helsinki, Finland. And as you can see, we have winter here now. It's actually like a fall storm, but I decided to come out because it's a cool weather here by the sea. But let's start. Let's start with the size of the lenses. You already know that the 12 to 100mm f4 lens is the biggest, and the new one, the 12 to 45mm f4 lens, is the smallest. And the 12 to 40mm f2.8 lens is in the middle. And the second thing is the fastest aperture. The 12 to 100mm f4 lens is an f4 lens, as I said, and the 12 to 45mm is also an f4 lens. And the oldest of these pro zoom lenses is f2.8, and that is the 12 to 40mm. And for some, the aperture is the most important thing, the fastest aperture I mean, and there is a point. If you have a f2.8 lens, it's usually better than the f4 lens. But then the 12 to 100mm f4 lens has a stabilizer built in, which works as a sync IS with the IBIS. So you kind of gain back one stop with the stabilizer. So in that sense, those are quite close. But I agree that a faster lens is usually better. But then you remember, when the 12 to 45mm is an f4 lens, it's a lot smaller, and that's why it's an f4 lens. So there is also an upside if you have not so fast lens, and that is something that you have to decide if you are planning on getting one of these three lenses, because you might want the bigger lens with the faster aperture, or you might want a smaller lens with the not so fast aperture. But that is one thing that you need to decide. And then let's talk about the features that these lenses have. Yeah, lenses can have features other than image quality. 12 to 100mm f4 and a 12 to 40mm f2.8 lens have the MF clutch, and they have the LFN button, which you can customize. But the 12 to 45mm f4 lens, the new one, does not have these features at all. And I don't really care about the LFN button, I use it very rarely. But the MF clutch is something that I use all the time when I'm out shooting, because sometimes I just like to quickly change my focus to manual focus, and with the MF clutch it's really easy. And that is something that actually would have been nice if the 12 to 45mm f4 lens had. And yes, you might wonder, that is a palm tree. The reason it's here is because during the summer, this is kind of like a beach place where there are a lot of bars and something to eat. They have concerts back there and all that kind of stuff. And but now it's empty, of course, because as you can see, the weather isn't very nice. It's actually raining, but I can't use this, because if I had this on, you wouldn't have seen the palm trees. That's why I don't have this right now, so I'm standing in the rain. But in the summer, this is really nice, and I might come here to make a video during the summer. But yes, it's a palm tree. A lot of you have wondered why Olympus made the 12 to 45mm f4 lens, since they already have these two lenses that we've been talking about, or the other two lenses we've been talking about. The reason is that Olympus has this, advertising slogan that says "break free from heavy gear." And that's exactly the reason why they made this lens, because like with the EM5 Mark III, the 12 to 45mm f4 lens is perfect match. It's light and small, it's really easy and great to use, and that's why they made it, because the 2.8 lens, the 12 to 40mm, might be a bit too big for that. And also in some countries the 12 to 45mm f4 is a bit cheaper, and I heard that in Australia the price is even higher than the 12 to 40mm f2.8 lens, which I don't understand. There must be a mistake. I hope they fix that, because I think this 12 to 45mm f4 lens should be cheaper than the other one. And if you already have these two lenses, the 12 to 100mm and the 12 to 40, then this 12 to 45 lens is maybe it's not for you. But if you already have, let's say, the kit lens, you have the 10 series OMD camera or the 5 series OMD camera, and you have the kit lens and you want to upgrade, then the 12 to 45mm f4 lens is a perfect lens. It's a pro grade lens, and it has all the other three lenses, it has weather sealing. As you can probably see, that weather sealing is a very good thing when the weather is like this, and that's why it's an important thing. And non-public cut, sorry, my camera woman was laughing. So where was I? Sorry about that. We started laughing because she thought I was funny. Anyways, I'm not. We were talking about the weather sealing, and as you can probably see, the weather is like this, then you need weather sealing. And it's a pity because weather like this is actually a very good weather to make images. So in that sense, it's a really good thing to have weather sealed equipment. So this might be a good upgrade. I'm talking about a 12 to 45 millimeter f4 for your replacement to your kit lens. We've talked a lot about these three lenses already, but one thing we haven't talked about is the image quality, which of course is a very important thing for many. Even though for me a slight differences in image quality is not a big thing, the biggest thing for me with the image quality, of course, is the look and feel of the lens. How is it to photograph? Because if the lens or the camera is not fun to use, you don't get any good images. That's for sure. If you have a better quality lenses, that's of course good. But the camera that I used is the EM5 Mark III and took images with all these three lenses. And now let's go to my office and see. It's getting a bit too cold and wet here. Let's go to my office and see the images and then make a conclusion of these three lenses. Wait a minute, let's take the camera, don't leave it here. See you in my office. Okay, here we are at the computer now, and I have taken almost the same crop from the same spot with all these three different lenses. And this is a 12 millimeter focal length on this one, and I had every settings was the same. It was taken with the same camera. The only thing that changed was the lens. The first one here is 12 to 100 millimeter, this one is 12 to 40, and this one is 12 to 45. All taken with 12 millimeters, and the aperture was f5.6, and the shutter speed was 1/160th of a second. And there is not much difference. The light difference over here is just because the light changed a bit during these three different exposures, because I had to change the lens. The reason I wanted to use the same camera was that camera won't affect the differences on these. And to be honest, I don't see any difference in the image quality with these three different cameras or different lenses if we use f5.6 12 millimeter on this particular test. And now let's see what happens if I switch to 25 millimeters. And now we have 25 millimeters on the same spot. And here also there might be a slight difference in the lighting because it was natural light and the sun came out. These images were taken before the rain started. And if we look at these, I don't see any difference on the image quality either. I would conclude the image quality part that there is no difference in image quality whatsoever with these lenses. At least on my test, I could not get any differences. The only difference is that what I noticed from some other photographs was that the 12 to 45 millimeter lens with the same aperture f4 gave a bit more brighter image. Okay, here we have the three images. This one is 12 to 100 millimeter. This one is in the middle is 12 to 40, and the right one is 12 to 45. And these were taken with the exact same settings, and the light was constant. I had a big soft light behind this bowl where there's some dried roses. These images are really bright because they are exposed to the right. The 12 to 45 millimeter image taken with the same settings as the other two it was 1/3 of a stop brighter. So the real difference between the 12 to 40 and the 12 to 45 millimeter f4 lens is not one stop, it's 2/3 of a stop. This is just this test, so this is not a scientific test. DxOMark, who usually does the more scientific way, do not have the 12 to 45 millimeter f4 lens, so I could not make sure that this is actually so. But this is something that I realized when I took the images with the same settings, and just this one I took home, I just needed to check, and the difference is only 2/3 of a stop. The 12 to 40 and 12 to 100 millimeter, they were exactly the same exposure, so there is no difference in that when we're using the Aperture f4. But as I said, the 12 to 45 millimeter is a bit brighter, 1/3 of a stop brighter. And let's make a conclusion. This was a very interesting test with these three lenses because I thought that the 12 to 45 millimeter won't be, you know, as good as the other two. But as we saw from the image quality, it was the same. No difference in the image quality. So no matter which one of these you might want to have, there won't be any difference in the image quality. But what are the things that matter to you? That is something that you need to figure out. I can say something about me and how I would choose with these lenses. And the funny thing is that the 12 to 40 f2.8 lens, which I have used the most since I switched to Olympus in 2014, I thought that would be my favorite. But no, actually 12 to 45 millimeter f4 is one of my favorites. And then if I wanted to have something with more reach, I would get the 12 to 100 millimeter f4 lens. So that is the things that you need to decide. Of course, the focal length, and then you have the price, which I've not mentioned yet. Check out what the prices are, which is the best deal. But I would go with the 12 to 100 millimeter f4 if the size wouldn't matter. I think it's a bit too big for all-around lens. But if you watch the 12 to 45 millimeter f4 first impression video that I made, I said that I was in Strasbourg because I had a small photo shoot there. And for the photo shoot, I used a 12 to 100 millimeter f4. But when I was doing my leisure time shooting, I had the 12 to 45 millimeter f4 because it was nice and small. So it depends on a bit which use or what kind of use you have for your lenses. The funny thing is that the 12 to 40 f2.8 was the least of these three, in my opinion. Of course, you might value the one stop, or actually 2/3 of a stop, faster lens, which is a very reasonable cause, or reasonable, what do you call it? Whatever. But anyways, you could choose that one and be very, very happy. It's a marvelous lens. I'm not saying that. But still, I like a bit smaller lens. That's because I want to break free from heavy gear. Sorry, I borrowed that from Olympus, but that's true. That's why I switched 2014 to Olympus. That was exactly the reason. That's why I really like the 12 to 45 mm f4 lens. But as I said, either one of these lenses will get the job done for you. But hey, thanks for watching and bye for now.